Hey, what's up? I'm Rafael de Furia, aka Rafi D is me, and I am back at it again on another beautiful Friday night. And this week we are going to be talking more about living abroad, living life abroad. But some of the misconceptions, some of the things that I've seen over the past 10 years of living abroad, the things that are the most misunderstood. But before we get into the video, if you would like to see more content about moving to Italy, Italian citizenship, and living life abroad, be sure to subscribe with that notification bell turned on. And if you could also give this video a like, I would really appreciate it. As always, a huge thank you to those of you who are helping to make videos like this possible through Patreon. And if you would also like to help on a monthly basis, you can go to rafaeldefuria.com/Patreon. Or to help out just one time, you can go to rafaeldefuria.com/support. Over the nearly past 10 years that I've been living abroad, there are certain patterns that you see, and there are certain things that you hear quite often, and there are things that I even hear from my own friends who I knew back in America when I used to live there, or even other expats who I've known who may have their own misconceptions about living abroad and like that I've been around in different places. And so these are going to be some of the things that I've heard the most, but it may not be the things that you will hear or experience yourself. And I'm not saying this is the definitive list of the top 5 things, but these are the 5 things that I've noticed to be the most common. But the number one thing, regardless of the order, but probably the most common thing that I see is that people just pack up their bags and leave, and they don't take care of anything else. The misconception being that you can just pack up and leave and just arrive someplace and be there. While that can work on a short-term basis, that absolutely is not a way to make your life for yourself abroad. It potentially could be, but you could be running into a few difficulties, such as legal status. If you just arrive someplace, and no matter what country you're in, but especially in the European Union and Italy for sure, just arriving here does not guarantee you the ability to stay here. And even specifically with Italy, they want you to apply in your home country for a visa before you even arrive. And you can't apply for certain things once you're already here in the country. Like to take a tourist visa and turn that into some other type of permesso di soggiorno, a permission of stay, it's basically impossible. There could potentially be a way around it if you're already married to an Italian citizen. And these next 2 points kind of go with each other. But the first one is that, oh wow, life abroad must be so expensive, or life abroad must be so cheap. And it depends on where you go. There are places that are going to be more expensive and less expensive. Like, for example, if you're from the US, just within the country itself, just the question of how far your money will go. For example, if you're in a place like New York City, what you would pay for a tiny little studio apartment, potentially you could go to somewhere in the Midwest, let's say Idaho, and you could potentially get a whole giant standalone home with a big garage, big backyard. So it's all about where you're located and how much you want to spend and how much you want to invest and how much you're actually bringing in at the end of the month and what kind of freedoms that gives you. For example, like in some parts of Sicily, you could be earning 250 euros for the whole month and your rent could be 300 euros. Or you could be in some place like Milan earning 1,500 for the month, but your rent is 2,000 euros. And of course, in those cases, I mean, it makes sense to have roommates or to be living with a partner, but location. It all makes a difference. And how you choose to spend your money. The choice of going out to eat or purchasing clothing, or do you smoke? What are the things that you end up doing throughout the month? What things do you want to cut out, or what things do you want to add in? Even like friends of mine have come up to me and said, wow, man, you must be really rich if you can afford to live in all these different places. And I hate to use that word rich, wealthy, we'll just use that. And that is probably the furthest thing from the truth. I have been financially comfortable in the past, but that is absolutely not my present for now. I mean, you could be someone who is very wealthy moving abroad and have a very lavish lifestyle, or you could move abroad and have a very simple life or difficult life, depending on what kind of situation you want to put yourself in. There are many people who just arrive in countries and they do the whole like really working their butt off to make a new life for themselves. And there are people that are just coming to retire in a country and to just enjoy the pizza, pasta, and amore, for lack of a better term, the dolce vita. And of course, this would be the perfect opportunity to mention that shirts, mugs, onesies, and more are available. With things like pizza, pasta, and amore, strict pizzatarian, different flavors of gelato, and more. Link down in the more info section below, or you can go to rafaeldefuria.com/NYAG-GEAR, NYAG gear. And the quality of life may be better or may be worse. I often think about, is the quality of my life actually better here where I live? Or would it have been better if I had stayed in the United States? And I think it depends on what is it that you're looking for? What are you wanting out of life? I mean, I think maybe if I had stayed in the United States, I would have been a lot more financially stable, especially because it's a country where it's my mother tongue. This is my language, English. Even though that financial stability would exist, possibly, it's still not for sure. It's always the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, and the grass is always greener on the other side. But I think, though, that my life here, I get to enjoy things a lot more than I would otherwise. And even though I'm in a difficult situation, that in a lot of ways, I'm happier than I've been in a long time. So what is the quality? What does quality mean for you? What are the qualities that are necessary for you to feel like you're being fulfilled in life, and to have that, and to feel like what you've put your time into is worth it? So that's something that you'll have to come up with on your own. And this, of course, is one of the reasons why doing a lot of research is very important. And the next point goes with what we were just talking about before, that a lot of people say, oh, wow, it must be so luxurious to live abroad. Wow, your life must be an absolute dream. You get to see and experience all of these different things. Wow, how amazing. And yes, when you're in a different place, you will get to experience things that people from your own country may not get to experience on a regular basis. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're living a luxurious lifestyle. It's just you're living a different lifestyle. Again, you could be living in the lap of luxury. You could go to a place like, for example, Dubai. Let's just use Dubai as an example. I know people who've gone to live there, and you could be living in this gorgeous, beautiful apartment, but with absolutely nothing to do, or that you can't go outside because it's too hot. And things may have this beautiful, luxurious look from the outside, but what are things like on the inside? They could still be great. What is it that you are going to have? Or there are also going to be other people who move to a country and okay, maybe their life is better than where they had originally come from, but that doesn't mean that they're living a luxurious lifestyle at all. They could be living in a small, tiny little apartment crammed with 10 people, one on top of another. So yes, is it possible to have a luxurious lifestyle? Absolutely, but you just have to work really hard for it. And of course, you have to have the right situations come about, and education for sure would help with that. Doesn't mean you have to, but it would seem to allow you to kind of walk into that a little bit more. But speaking of education, let's go on to the next thing. Teaching English is the best way to move abroad. It's going to be so much fun. It's going to be a great experience getting to share some of your language and some of your culture with other people. And I can say, while English teaching has its moments where it can be fun, it's teaching. It's English. English is not an exciting subject for most people. It's a way to get by. It's something you do. Okay, sure, there may be people who are very passionate about English and learning English and teaching English, but to actually say that you're going to go abroad and have so much fun teaching English, it's a way to make a living. And there may be demand for English teachers all around the world, but it doesn't mean that you're going to be able to have a very comfortable lifestyle. There may be places where you can go, like I've heard things about going to teach English in Asia, Southeast Asia, and what an English teacher might earn there would be significantly higher than what the locals would be earning. So that means that they can have a much better quality of life than the locals would, and maybe even better than where they come from. So it could be really good there. Or, for example, coming to some places in Europe, even like in Spain, Portugal, southern Italy, you could be earning very little money and just getting by barely. Again, it depends on the location where you are. And I would say for sure, if you're considering teaching English, unless you're very adventurous, don't go just to teach English. If you do, though, it's better, just in general, when you're going abroad anyway, to have a little bit saved up so that if it ends up being a nightmare situation, that you could potentially live at least for a few months without a job. But teaching English can be a dream for some and a nightmare for others. It all just depends on you and what you are comfortable with. Some people really enjoy the situation. Some people really hate the situation. Some people prefer teaching business English. Some people prefer teaching conversational English. Some people prefer teaching children. Some people prefer teaching adults. I personally prefer conversation and working with adults. But then also there's things to consider. What is your education level? Going kind of back to what we were talking about before. Do you have an English degree? If you don't, then getting a TEFL certificate or a CELTA or one of these other English teaching certificates. And having one of those certificates can be an interesting way of being able to even think about approaching the field. Being a native speaker isn't enough, but being an English teacher isn't the only way of moving abroad, especially if you do have a decent education or that you've been able to accomplish something in your life. Or even, for example, programming is something that is very in demand all around the world. So if you have experience, especially with programming, you potentially could go anywhere, even without a proper education, if you know what you're doing and you have a decent CV that you can show off or a good body of work that you can present to potential employers. So having an education can help you, but it's not necessary. And English teaching isn't the only job that you can get living abroad. But again, like I've said before, having the basics of any language will help you to get any kind of job. I mean, even for example, if you wanted to just go to McDonald's and get a job there, okay, it's not ideal, but for some it could be enough so that they're able to get by. And this actually has come up in a past conversation where somebody said, you know what, I'll just move abroad. I speak English. I can just go work at a McDonald's. And that's not quite how it would work. For example, if you were in the United States and you only spoke German, would you be able to go to McDonald's there and get a job? I don't think it would quite work out because you have to be able to communicate with your coworkers, your boss, or potentially even customers. So to be able to have some of the language, even for a basic job, even if you wanted to work at one of the unofficial American embassies, aka Mickey D's, McDonald's, you'll still need some basic language skills for that place. And going on to the next thing that I hear about a lot is that people assume that when they move to a new country that all of their problems will disappear, that they'll just fade away, that all of their problems will be gone, and life will automatically become better. And that probably couldn't be any further from the truth. Potentially, if you're going from a country that is in a better financial situation than where you're coming from, maybe, but there's not this automatic change. And very often, if you have certain problems in your life, those problems potentially can follow you. This is a bad example, but for example, if you're from San Francisco and you're a heavy smoker, just because you move to Lisbon, Portugal, or to Rome doesn't mean that you're going to stop smoking. Actually, if you move to someplace like Italy, you'll probably start smoking a lot heavier. But I think this actually goes to maybe show my point a little bit. I hope this is understandable. But if there's something that you feel as though is an unhealthy pattern in your life, unless you actually work on fixing that first, nothing is going to be different when you live abroad. If you're living in a small town in your country and you hate that small town, you hate that small town life, you think that everybody in your small town is so narrow-minded and that moving to another country will fix all of that, but you decide to move to an even smaller town in the new country, it doesn't matter where you are. A small town is a small town. And changing from one small town to another small town, another country, it makes no real difference. And think about it like where you're from. Like if you are from a small town and you want to try life in another country, but you still want to be in a small town because it's comfortable. Think about how foreigners might be treated where you live currently. Not even talking about racism, not talking about any of these things. When you have somebody who is an outsider, very often the natural instinct for many people, I'm not saying this is right and I'm not saying this is how it should be, but the natural instinct for a lot of people all around the world is a sense of distrust. So what problems you may have had in your little small town may not actually go away and potentially could increase if that's your problem. Or again, going back to San Francisco, if you're living in a big city and you hate living in a big city, but you decide, I want to move to Hamburg, it's still a city. It's not going to be any different. Okay, fine, the culture will be different. The people will very much be different, but there are still going to be certain constants that city life is hectic. Even if you don't move internationally, but you just move from one town to the next or from one city to another, one state to another, your problems won't always disappear. Maybe there could be certain influences on your life from certain people around you, but what I've seen from personal experience and from people who I've known is that there are some times when you have to look inside before you start looking at your location. Of course, though, your surroundings will have an impact on your mental well-being, and that could be part of your issue, but being in a new place doesn't inherently make your life better. All you're doing is changing the scenery. But I think that's a good place to leave it off for now. This is something we will for sure revisit in the future and talk more about. And of course, if you would like to see more content like this and more videos about moving to Italy, Italian citizenship, and living life abroad, please be sure to subscribe with that notification bell turned on. And if you could also give this video a like, I would really appreciate it, as it does help out the channel. And if you would like to help out on a monthly basis, you can go to rafaeldifuria.com/Patreon. Or if you just want to help out once, you can go to rafaeldifuria.com/support. Or another way to help show support for the channel and get a little something for it is you can go to rafaeldifuria.com/NYAG-gear. All of the links are down in the more info section below. Thank you so much for joining me on another beautiful Friday night. Of course, I am Rafael Di Furia, aka Rafi D is me. It has been so great to see you all again. I look forward to seeing you all next Friday night. I hope you all are enjoying the beginning of your new year, and may it be a great one. See y'all next Friday. Later.